Hello and welcome to the Jupiter's Legacy panel at WonderCon. My name is Mark Millar and together with Frank Whiteley, I created the Jupiter's Legacy comic book. I'm also an executive producer on the show and we're launching on Netflix on May the 7th. A quick bit of background on me, I wrote all your favourite Marvel stories. They all get turned into Marvel movies. I also created Kick-Ass, Kingsman and Wanted. This is the big one. This is the one I've wanted to do my whole life and I'm so glad it's turned out as well as it has. I'm so glad you're all going to be seeing it soon too. So I've got the cast here with me today. The first time ever they've all been assembled in one place, and I'd like to introduce you to them right now. First, we've got Josh Duhamel, Leslie Bibb, Ben Daniels, Matt Lanter, Mike Wade, Elena Kampouris, Andrew Horton, and Ian Quinlan. Let's kick things off with the adults in the group, you know, the parents, the original superheroes. So let's go first to Josh, the leader of the team. Josh, first question. How would you describe Jupiter's Legacy to somebody who's never read the books, the fools that have never read the books out there? What would you say? How would you describe the project?
I would describe it as an epic sort of, first of all, a family drama about this dysfunctional group of superheroes and how they became who they are over a span of 100 years. That to me was the most interesting part of it, was the dysfunction of this family and how they've actually dealt with being who they've become over, you know, from the 30s until now. And that to me was a different look at this genre, different than I'd ever seen before.
Well, did that pull you in as an actor? You know, like these things can be cookie cutter, can't they? You know, and something that's a bit odd like this, like you're playing a guy at 120 and you're playing a guy at 30. When that lands on your desk, is that a bit more interesting, you know, than being the Spider-Man bad guy or something?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea that we've seen this genre before, but I think that the fact that these guys have been doing it for almost 100 years and how it's affected their family and how it's affected how they raise their kids and the values that they had when they first started out may not be the same values that the younger generation has. And I think that's the struggle. And I think that's relatable in that, you know, they go through the same sort of stuff that any parent would go through, you know? And I think that the idea of, am I doing the right thing? Am I raising these kids right? With not only saddling them with the weight of the world, but also, you know, making sure that they sort of value the same values that we've had for the last however many years.
Also, too, Mark, you know what's interesting? It's like you see this group of six, like, you know, or the group of us, and you see us when we're young and we're filled with dreams and hopes, and then you track it to us as adults and 100 years later. I don't think very many shows you get to see someone in the beginning and someone at the end.
But Leslie, where do you take that is amazing because, you know, you're doing this present day stuff that looks like an American indie movie sometimes, you know, where everybody's sitting around the dinner table and everything. And then you get to play Katharine Hepburn as well. And it's the same character, you know, in 1929. It's like, is that fun as an actress being able to, you know, stretch like that?
I hadn't ever done a real period movie or anything or done something like that. So it's so fun because our costume designer is this woman named Liz Wolfe, and she's so brilliant. And once you put on those costumes, I mean, I had pantyhose from 1930. They came out of a box and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do. And then I ran one and I was like, ah. And so there's some authenticity to that that is really exciting. And I don't know, for you guys, did you feel like when you put on those clothes, I felt like when we were on the boat and whenever we were in those clothes, I immediately felt different. I mean, it's of course, when you put on like our uniform, like our superhero costumes, I mean, those are pretty badass and pretty amazing. And I feel like I have the best one, but we're not in a competition. But anyway, but I do feel like there was something so remarkable about being in those clothes. I mean, and I thought we all looked so dope in them. I thought we looked so fantastic, and it does help you. It changes. Did you guys find that it changed how you like moved and how you
where you stand, where you walk, everything? I mean, she's so detailed. She's absolutely, completely brilliant to work with. Fantastic.
It looks amazing because it looks so expensive because clothes cost a fortune to do in period and everything. But it looks like Once Upon a Time in America. Those flashbacks look like Sergio Leone's directing this. It looks absolutely fantastic.
There's something epic about the story of this.
The past gives it a weird integrity. And to see the totality of somebody's life is actually quite epic. You rarely see that in films. You normally get a snapshot of somebody's life, don't you? Yeah. But this is kind of the beginning, middle, and end, which gives it a real grand.
Also played by the same people. That was one of the things that hooked me in when they said you're going to be playing all the ages. I was like, this is a really cool.
Another thing that makes it feel so epic is there are journeys on top of journeys. I mean, you're talking about the lifelong journey, but there are also the journey of Sheldon, going from sane to insane to wait, is he actually, you've got the for George, the depression and how his finances play into that. You've got all these arcs and then huge arcs over top, and it just makes it all feel so big. Because
I was showing my 9-year-old the bits I could show her, and she thought you guys were actually like 70, 80 years old, but made to look young in the film. She was like, the effects are amazing to get these guys looking young. She because she saw you. I don't
know how I feel about that. She was always old. I'm calling my agents.
But because the first time you see the characters, they're old, then she was like, my God, the makeup and the effects is so cool, So like,
I say for amazing. Amazing.
Josh, how long were you in the Josh and Ben, I feel like, had the worst go of like makeup. How long were you guys in makeup and hair for old Josh and old Ben?
Well, Ben had it a little worse than I did. I'll let you go ahead, Ben.
Well, it's like a whole prosthetic. So you have all this kind of like rubber stuck to your face, and then the wig goes on top, and then the worst bit is the facial hair. So in combination with the super suits, which are, I mean, they look fantastic, but they are the most uncomfortable things to wear. 3 layers of really, really tight, unbelievable, weird spandex that kind of crush your body. Like you have them on for an hour and you have to constantly fight against them. And then these collars with these fake beards and rubber faces in incredible heat was unbearable. And every 5 minutes, someone coming along, squashing the hair back into your face. That's kind
or with a tooth or your toothbrush. Remember, she was
toothbrush. And Ben couldn't laugh because then,
What I really loved about that was that, like you talked about the wardrobe when we were back in the 20s and 30s. Putting on those prosthetics and the wig and getting in that age sort of and understanding that you've now been doing this for 90 years.
Yeah.
That naive sort of wonder that you have in the earlier time, and then to be able to have that, what does that do to you 90 years later, having the pressure and the responsibility of doing what we've done for so long? How does that affect you? There's a weight that comes with that for me as an actor was so much fun to play. You go from this guy who's about to, encounter the world, and then you go to, so much time later, and it just feels like there was playing those 2 different ends of the spectrum were what made this so interesting for me. Having gone through and seen and experienced and overcome so much, and then going back in time and sort of, what was it like before we had these powers?
I think there's something bubbling out there. I think this is going to be massive as a result. Even these little teasers, I'm seeing people going crazy. The costume's been released. The only negative thing I saw with the costume, which I didn't notice, is that the guys have got square testicles. Did you guys notice this?
We heard about some square.
You didn't know that? That's what happens when you gain superpowers. You like
I'm just wondering, have any of you guys ever been up for a superhero role before? Is this the first time you've been up for a costume thing?
First time for me.
Yeah.
I mean, Halloween costumes.
I thought that I'd passed this point in my career. I didn't think that I was ever going to get asked.
Right on time, man.
Here we are.
Right on time.
No, I was actually thinking about that. I think it was just this morning. I was thinking about the fact that, okay, I have this awesome original show coming out. I never thought I was going to be a part of one of these, and here we are. We get to be the first version of it. You know, we're not remaking anything from before. This is like the original. Yeah. And I just feel like Netflix has done such a beautiful job. They've really given us a clean palette to go create something awesome. And I feel like that's what we've been able to do. And, you know, and I get to work with all these guys, and we all get to kind of create this thing on how we best sort of saw what you imagined in the first place, Mark. And so, you know, I feel very lucky to be a part of the first version of something.
Josh, it's true. It's like, I will say, you never know, like you go to work, right? And you never know what the group is going to be like. And do you guys, I was saying to Mark earlier, I said that 7 and 8 when we were on the island.
Oh,
and we were in Pier.
It was the best time.
It was the best.
Bonding. It was
really
a fantastic time, just the 6 of us together from that moment when that hideous time on that rocking boat out in the cold.
Oh man, I was wondering who's going to bring it up first.
Yeah, I mean, but like
such good fun.
It really was. And then, you know, and we literally were in it because it was almost like Mother Nature was, I don't know, working with us or
it was sort of a
us.
test, and it was kind of testing us in a way.
Yeah.
It literally was
really
like
hot, and it snowed, and it rained, and it was crazy shit weather. It was brilliant.
And remember those, and then the dust being those huge fans that we had to go into, and then the rock pile and all the fighting and all that stuff. And it felt like a test. Yeah, but it was so fun. And I think it really cemented the 6 of us in a way together. And it was like, if you can be in this circumstance for 14 hours, 15 hours a day and still be laughing, still be like corpsing when you're on set, like sitting there going, don't look at me, I'm going to start crying.
No, it was great. It was like a coming together of a company of actors. And it was the first time we all kind of like gelled, really. It felt really special. And it was like the writing, there was lots of like huge dramatic stuff just in that little section. And it was kind of great, kind of all kind of like go at it together. It was brilliant. It was really good fun.
I watched it at the Russian stage when it was just green screen, and you guys looked like stage actors. You know, I mean, it was basically just you guys and nothing. It was just blank. And
some of us are stage actors, not me, but some of us are.
But you know, but the idea was I couldn't believe what you brought to it when you had nothing to play with. You know, you were essentially looking at into nothing, as if you were on a school stage or something in the very first cuts that I saw. And now I'm looking at it and it looks like the most expensive movie ever made. It looks incredible.
The storytelling was there though, Mark. The script was there for us, you know, and we had great sets. What we did have, if it wasn't green screen, the sets we were on were bonkers, incredible. And the writing was on the page for us too.
But also, Maddie, I think it goes back to something you said earlier where you were like, there were like relationships within the relationships within. So there's all these little arcs. It's like each character has something happening with each person. And there's all this backstory with everyone. And I think that's really what elevates it. And it's what you were saying, Mark, that it is different. There is an epicness, if that's a word, but like there is a grandeur. It is now, it is like a grandeur to the story. And I think like and that was what was so cool, because you really saw all those little baby relationships. Because also we didn't have Maddie. Like Maddie didn't come in for a while because you know, he wasn't part of us as like, you know, older superheroes, because he went rotten on us and
doing evil things.
Evil. So it was really nice to have us all together and to see all of us sort of, I mean, at our possibly best selves, or at our most optimistic selves, at our versions where we think we can change the world and we can do good.
What this story has, which feels very fresh to me, is that we're really used to at the moment seeing these kind of glib, hip, sassy sort of superheroes and supervillains. And this has like a real gravitas as a story. It's first and foremost a drama. And then suddenly we are superheroes as well. But it's the drama of it all that is really, really, really strong, and it's definitely what pulled me in when I first read it. I mean, I love American writers like Tennessee Williams and Arthur Miller, especially Arthur Miller, actually, who takes a family as a nucleus, and all the characters are grey. It's not black and white, which we're just force fed at the moment. Like, either you're cancelled or you're not, and these characters are all shades of grey, and it's really exciting to see how that becomes sort of a metaphor for, in this character's case, these characters' cases, America, but then it's much more universal as well, because we recognize all of them and we understand where they're all coming from, because we've seen them in the 20s where it all starts. And it just feels very, very fresh, and also really current. It feels like it could be written now, with the kind of state of the world, how it's declining, and what is going to get us out of this. And that follows this story.
In 2012, when I wrote it, I remember we were just coming out the financial crash and everything. And I thought, well, things can't get much worse than this. And then it went into the craziest, decade ever, And you realise it's always chaos, though. Our parents knew chaos, our grandparents knew. I mean, what World War I and World War II compared to this, So you realise life is always pretty chaotic, really, isn't it? And that's what makes it interesting.
We're always looking for what's going to get us out of the shit. Yeah. What is going to be the next thing that will kind of like move us on to the next stage? Is it going to be these kids in our story?
We talk about origin stories for superheroes. I feel like this is like the ultimate one, because it's so detailed and you get to stay with these characters with all their flaws for, over 100 years. It's like an evolution of the genre. I don't think there's any going back after Jupiter's Legacy.
Well, I think the thing that's changed most, is that it's no longer about superheroes versus supervillains, which is what we've had for the last 80 or 90 years with comic book movies and comic books themselves. Because if you think about it, in real life, nobody's a hero or a villain. Everybody's just people with flaws, aren't they? Everybody's got a dark side. Everybody lets down their friends. Everybody gets off with someone they shouldn't get off with and everything. But when you add a costume to it, it heightens it and gives you a drama like you've never seen before.
And I like you didn't shy away from that either. You didn't shy away from the subversive, like the taboo of it all. I mean, you touched on things that are very current, but also very relatable. You weren't afraid to make, these people, there was no construct. Okay, this guy's good, this guy's bad. I mean, even villains, a villain doesn't see himself as a villain. A villain sees himself as somebody who's just trying to do what he does. And when you start looking at these characters in 4 dimensions, we're always in the in-between. I mean, there's no sort of, like, my character, for example, has this idea of what he believes is right. And the younger generation, especially some of even the villains, don't believe that that's what it should be. And that's sort of what the conflict is that there's, who's right. He believes he's right because this is what he believes is going to push us forward, but he may not be right. And so he's forced to sort of understand, or at least sit in the shoes of somebody else for the first time. And I think that there's a valuable sort of lesson in that. If we can just sort of learn to understand, okay, so what I've always believed and what I've always thought this code was meant to be, maybe there is something that I need to sort of reevaluate. And that's really what I think, especially for my character, I got to reimagine what I thought was the way to go, and put myself in other people's shoes, and especially the younger generation's shoes.
Also, all these characters live much longer than a human being lives. So there's just these extra years that have been added on to their lives. And what do you do with that time? And they all feel like they're at the end, and it's just like, it's all this craziness is creeping in with them all. That's really exciting. I think that's where the kind of meat lies, because suddenly they're having to roll around in the dirt, and it gets really, really exciting, I think.
I think that's what Mark, I think you did such a beautiful job of, was despite the abilities that they've sort of taken over, you've still managed to keep them human and make them relatable, and that they're still, this guy can go do I'll speak from, from my character's perspective. He can do basically anything except relate to his daughter. She's the thing that he can't understand. He cannot figure out what he's supposed to do. And that's what really sort of makes him start figuring out that he needs to start seeing the world in a little different way. And I think that any parent can relate to that. I mean, I have a 7-year-old son, and he's already made up his own superhero, and his name is Sharp Sword. He goes, "You're not the utopian, you're the Pootopian." So I'm dealing with this kid who's,
can we write that in for Skyfox?
Yeah. And so I think that there's this fantastic idea of what could be and what these guys are capable of. But at the same time, you can relate to the basic things that anybody has to deal with. And even these guys have to deal with those same things. And I think you did a great job of weaving that into the story. And that's what makes this such a great drama as much as this great adventure story.
King Lear, Hamlet, Romeo and Juliet, all of those things are all just weaved into it, so if you're going to steal, you might as well steal from Shakespeare.
What story have you seen a superhero go to therapy? I mean, this dude is actually in therapy. I think that's brilliant because he at least has the wherewithal to go, you know what? I don't get this. I need to talk to somebody. Who does he talk to? He's the guy that people come to for answers, but he's as confused as everybody else. And I love the idea that, there's this subversive sort of aspect to this story that makes it so human and so relatable. And I think that the fact that this guy is just searching for answers, he's grasping at anything he can to sort of understand and get through it. And he actually goes and talks to somebody about it. I've never seen that in this genre before.
One thing I think the show does very well that I tried to do in the book, but the show does better, I think, is the idea that history moves in a cycle, just like people's lives move in a cycle as well.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to break the cycle of history. So we have like a financial crisis in 1929. There was one in 2008. And we're possibly heading into another one now. And you almost can't hold back the tide. And similarly, I think we can't help but become our parents. And what's really interesting, without any spoilers for the end of episode 1, is that Brandon breaks the cycle. That's what it's about. It's like somebody actually changes the plan and then it all goes crazy. But really, when you look at our lives, at a certain point, we realize we've just said something our dad or our mum said or whatever. We realize they're the only lessons we ever learn. Really, our parents' lessons, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who out of the group, now you all know each other quite well, you lived together for 4 or 5 months. Who out of the group would you trust to make the world a better place if they got superpowers? Like who would you give it to? You can only choose one.
The last two that I would give it to would be Leslie and Ben. Those two are.
Yeah, that's the definite right. That's the definite right way to start.
I would say I would trust these superheroes with Matt or Mike.
I was actually gonna say Mike Wade. I was gonna say Mike Wade. I was gonna say. No, Matt Lanter's not gonna do it. No.
Is that just a front? He seems like such a nice guy.
He'd be riding around this Jeep. No.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mike. I was gonna say Mike. Yeah.
I'd give it to Mike Wade, and then I'd kill him.
Mike Wade.
Oh man.
Leslie, the word on set I always heard is that you were the most into it, though. Like you were loving it up on the wires, all that kind of stuff. You really get into the flying and everything.
Oh, I loved it so much. I mean, maybe because I don't have testicles, because it's not uncomfortable for me. But I was.
I've got to Google this. Hang on.
Newsflash, I don't have testicles. But so I would get up there and it would feel so like safe. I could stay up there for hours.
Well,
I love it. I'm the person that if people say, would you rather breathe underwater or fly? I always pick fly. So I got sort of.
I've never even asked that question.
I'd like to breathe underwater. That's your superpower. Just breathing underwater.
That sounds like a threat.
Okay, guys, moving on. We're going to head over to the next generation heroes now. We've got Andrew, Elena, and Ian. So first question is for Elena. Tell us about Chloe. It is an interesting character. What drew you to Chloe? What was it about her that made you want to do this instead of one of the boring ones you get on other shows?
when I read it, just experiencing Chloe for the first time in the books, I had never quite come across someone so complex. And what I love about her, what you captured so beautifully, is her unpredictability. She is definitely a wild card. Her temper is kind of unmatched. She doesn't quite, she's got all these powers, but she doesn't quite have it down, like how to control them, how to quell them. So that's what makes her so fun to play. It's so fun to dig into, is like in each scene, you don't know what's she going to say, what's she going to do, you don't want to cross her, but she also at the same time has all of these layers to her. She's so complex. She's got a lot of pain. She's kind of in this, when we first meet her, she's definitely in the kind of, I don't know, call it like the pain zone, right? And she's kind of the queen of the pain zone. And this is kind of a place of, it's almost like a safe space for her. She finds comfort in it. She kind of isolates herself because she's feeling so much. She's kind of in pursuit of numbing it. So she, looks to drugs. She looks to all of these different kind of vices to try and kind of get through each day because of the toxicity with the relationships between her family and her brother. And
she's got everything going for her. She's, her mum and dad are like the two most famous people on the planet and everything. And where the idea came from for me was Carrie Fisher. I remember reading Carrie Fisher's book years back, and she was talking about her mum and dads were like Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher. And she never felt, even though she was Princess Leia, that she could live up to them. So I thought it's kind of interesting, the idea that even if you are awesome, you sometimes realize it, So it's good. But the thing is, you're a superhero kind of in real life, aren't you? Like, I'd say of anyone I've ever known, like you can speak, you're a martial artist, you're a dancer, you can do all these amazing things, How can you empathize with somebody as messed up as this? Because you just seem to kind of have all these super abilities,
Oh gosh, well that's very kind of you.
Yeah.
But for me, she's got a determination about her. She's not a quitter, so her fire I really related to, and I know. Yeah. Okay, in this story, just like she doesn't come across as, she comes across as a quitter. Okay, she comes across as not having determination and being kind of a slacker. But that's, I think, the more we go along with her into the story, you realize how strong she is and how much she really truly does love her family and her strength and her determination. So that drew me to her.
What about you, Andrew? The story is obviously that you guys are the two disappointing children of like the world, but tell us a wee bit about your character, because you're obviously different from Chloe, how and what will it disappoint, compared to her.
Brandon and Chloe are kind of like two polar opposites, or at least that's how we portray them in the show. Elena has just so eloquently explained everything that Chloe is. Brandon is kind of the antithesis of that, at least in my opinion, just because, everything that he does is to impress his father, is to impress his parents. And, everything that he wants from his life is to be the utopian. That's all that he wants to be. And no matter what he does, he can never reach that level. There's a great line in the show which Elena says, where it's like, nobody can live up to the utopia, not even dad. And I think like that speaks like on so many levels, that if I, as Brandon, am trying to live up to that, like if Sheldon can't even do it as himself, then I haven't got a chance in hell. But Brandon's a very earnest character, and he just seeks to please, and he keeps on falling short. And I think that creates this level of sadness within him as well, and disappointment. As you said, we're the two disappointing children. We've got these beautiful scenes, and you can't help but feel moved by them, and feel moved by the struggle that this family has. Brandon and Chloe's relationship, even. There's something there where as children they've been so close, and as they've grown up they've just grown apart. And that's something which weighs heavy on Brandon as well, because he wants the best for Chloe wants the best for him, but she just couldn't care less about the superhero stuff. And I think that's what's so great about Jupiter's, is that it speaks as much to family as it does to superheroes. And that's what makes it so unique, is that you've got this focus on human relationships in a superhuman world.
Hopefully frivolous, right, Ian? But the first thing I have to ask you about is your hair in the show, because the visuals are up online and already people are losing their minds. This is going to be the Comic-Con 2022 haircut.
The mohawk, right? Oh man, I love that thing. That's my real hair. That was my real hair. I came in. I came in looking like a wild man. I just had my hair grown out and like had a beard, and I was like, "Dude, I'm your canvas. Do what you want with me." And they just decided they wanted to give Hutch this like cool edge, and they settled on this mohawk, and then they were like, then they teased it out and put all this like dreadlock sort of holding paste in it, and it just like, it was just amazing. I think it really helped me figure out who this guy was a lot. It was like that he's just razor sharp and doesn't care what people like. He's very jarring when he walks into a room, and it's like you gotta be chutzpah is the word I'm looking for, to walk into a room with that hairstyle.
I mean, it's great. It's a great part for you as well. I mean, you get to be Han Solo. You know, it's the coolest of the characters. You know, really. And I remember in your audition.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, Brandon? I just want to make sure you heard that.
The quirkiest of the characters was that?
Yeah, close. We'll find out. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Listen, tell us about Hutch, though. I mean, tell us about the character and what makes it work for you.
When I first read this character, I immediately bonded with him. I think, first of all, I grew up reading all your stuff, Mark, and I already told you that. And I was like,
I thought you were lying. Was that
no? I was like, I bought the New York, like, yeah, I bought Civil War. I was a fan of the Authority. I was a fan of the Ultimates, like everything. And so when I auditioned for it, I was like, this feels oddly familiar. And then I figured, and then I like went back and I was like, oh, it's him. I get it. I guess. And when I saw,
you said that in the audition, you'd have got the part. Just say that at the start of the audition.
I should have been like, big fan. Hey, here I am. I had an affinity for Hutch immediately because I think, first of all, as a guy who doesn't fit into any clear boxes and doesn't want to. I think one thing that I see is like, we're both biracial, and it's like, when you grow up like that, everybody's trying to put you in a box or tell you who you are or tell you what your identity is. And this man is trying to break free of all of those constrictions. You know, in a world of like, there are superpowered people and non-superpowered people. There are villains and heroes. And it's like, he just doesn't subscribe to any of this and wants to find his own identity and wants to be who he wants to be. And so he kind of lives as an iconoclast outside of these binaries. And he's found a group of people who also feel the same way that he does, who sort of like, who are very counterculture, who are not going with the flow. And simultaneously, I think this man is, as he's coming into his own identity, is still searching parts of his identity. And that's part of his journey right now, where he's constantly questioning his origins and trying to look for, you know, his home. I think I would say, you know, and his people.
His dad, you know, he was a 60s counterculture revolutionary superhero who hung out with the Weathermen and the Black Panthers. And
I think it's a really exciting opportunity, and I'm really glad like I got to be a part of this, because I think it shows a new perspective, and I think Hutch is the perfect catalyst to kind of show that perspective of a guy who's like at a time, especially because Jupiter comes at a time when the country's like, you know, at odds, and people are trying to figure out what the values are. The children are trying to figure out if they want to be like their parents or if they want to do something new, and everybody's trying to figure out who they are, where they want to be, and where they want to go. That this is like this character kind of takes the room by storm.
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because like Chloe and Brandon both grew up with their parents and ended up disappointments, you know, and you didn't have anyone, you know, you're living on the streets and all this kind of thing. You never knew your dad. He just got the mum pregnant, really, you know, and would show up occasionally in his life, you know. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? The character himself, just he feels the antithesis of Chloe and Brandon in every way.
Yeah, completely. I think this guy is trying to, whereas Brandon might be trying to live up to his father, I think this man's been trying to prove to himself and to his father that he's worth a damn, that he means something, you know. And I think that leaves somebody with a chip on their shoulder for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think whereas one's fighting for approval, one's actively defying this parent figure who abandoned them. Yeah.
That's interesting.
And I think that's also what attracts Hutch to Chloe. I think we find these two people who are trying to break free of their family ties and try to be their own people. Two potheads who like they fire each other up before shore, and it gets pretty hot. Yeah, and I think we constantly are challenging one another, and I think we butt heads a lot, and I think that's also what makes for worthwhile allyship and love interest.
Clutch. Hashtag clutch.
Clutch.
I think that what's interesting too is like, Hutch comes in kind of out of nowhere and it's so fun. These scenes are fun. We definitely do butt heads. But for me, if he was a fisherman, if he was a bank robber, it doesn't matter. Like, she's attracted to his soul. And the fact that he doesn't he's counterculture. He doesn't subscribe to the disguises, the masks, the suits, very much what her family represents. So it's a really fun dynamic.
Speaking of suits, actually, you guys worked like hell. You were in the gym. I was told you were in the gym all the time, and Andrew was the only one who got to wear a superhero costume. Were you a little bit jealous?
I busted my ass to get as big as possible, and then they put a muscle suit on me anyway.
Right? Yeah.
The arms on that thing are so huge. Like, it's literally like having Chris Hemsworth's arms on your body. And I was like, no, but nobody's going to believe that's me. So, for other scenes where I was out of the suit, then I was like, right, we're gonna put the time in here. We're gonna do the work. It was fun. It was fun. I love it. I'm addicted to it now. I just can't wait to get back to a gym because they're still closed.
When you were wearing the costume, did you act a little differently, do you think? Like, when I was a kid and I put on a Spider-Man costume or something, I always felt I could batter like 10 guys, Like, when you were wearing that superhero costume walking around, did you act a little differently? Did you feel a bit more powerful?
Absolutely. I mean, when I first tried the costume on, even in the early tests, like, I was like a kid in a candy shop. I just could not stop smiling. I was like, this is so cool. Like, tell child me that in 20 years time you're going to be dressing up as a superhero and playing a superhero for your job. You'd never believe it for an instant. But yeah, walking around in that thing, you just feel powerful.
Did you find when you were wearing the costume, people on set treated you a little differently? Did you get a little more respect, being a superhero and everything?
People just stare at you more when you're on set wearing the super suits, just because it's such a cool thing. I mean, like, superhero shows and superhero films in general just have not lost any sort of steam, regardless of how much is out there. Like, coming into this, you'd think people might be tired of superheroes by now, but like, not at all. And, if anything, because of how good other things have been, it just pushes us up and makes us, be even more anticipated and even more exciting. But the suits, yeah, they were something special for sure.
Because it's WonderCon, it's a comic book convention. We want to test your superhero knowledge. So I've got a superhero quiz here for you, everyone. This is a difficult quiz, right? But you guys have been superheroes. You've been working in this game now for nearly 2 years. So I'm going to see if you've done your research. So I'm going to hit you with the toughest superhero quiz ever. The first guy ever to play Superman on the big screen.
Kirk Allen.
Holy cow.
Who?
Yes, correct.
Kirk Allen.
1948, you're right. Wow, well done. A bonus.
What is she looking down at?
No, I just put these around.
I'm thinking.
What was the original name for Marvel Comics before they renamed it in the 60s?
Timely Comics.
Yes. Since the 1930s, Timely.
Wow. I did Iron Man. It's Marvel.
Right. Oh my God. Bruce Wayne's Wayne Manor. How far away from Gotham City? There's a little sign in the show that tells you how far away from Gotham City it is.
12 miles. 12 miles.
Yes.
Wow.
What the?
Wow.
This is great. Can we do a different quiz? My God, this is so embarrassing. We're sitting.
This is so much better than a normal Zoom quiz.
I know, what's going on?
Green kryptonite kills Superman. What does white kryptonite do?
Gives them energy.
No, it kills all plant life.
Kills all plant life.
It controls Superman's mind.
It kills plants.
This is insane.
It does.
Nick Fury, Sam Jackson's character, he leads S.H.I.E.L.D., he's the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., but back in World War II, what was he the leader of? I think Wade's Chance.
In Syria.
What is it?
The
Howling Commandos.
Elena, got it? Hank Pym has been Ant-Man and Giant Man. Can you tell me 2 other superhero identities that he's had?
Yellow Jacket and Goliath.
Yeah. Like, this is a bit
what?
weird.
She's getting so competitive. This is amazing.
Yeah,
In
go ahead.
In 1942, Wonder Woman had a sidekick. Nobody will get this. What was the character's name?
Etta Candy. That name's too good not to know. Come on.
Anna Candy?
Etta. E-T-T-A.
Etta Candy.
Etta.
The Bill Bixby TV show, The Hulk, back in the 70s. Who was the guy who adapted it for television? He directed the first episode, wrote the first episode, right? Nobody's getting this one.
Kenneth Johnson?
Luke
Is that his
Brigman.
name? Kenneth? No. It's the writer.
Oh, Kenneth Johnson, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's it.
It's like the worst episode
And
of
so
Jeopardy.
my palms are sweaty. I'm getting nervous.
Have you
Okay.
have you guys seen that scene?
You're already gonna win.
Yeah,
Why are you nervous? You've already
No, but
won.
it makes-
Green Lantern was created back in the 40s. The original Green Lantern, the Golden Age Green Lantern, what was his secret identity?
Oh, I do know this.
Alan Scott.
Alan Scott. You're right, yeah. Wow. Who created Captain America? Here's an easy one for you guys. Who created Captain America? Who created,
Not
who
Stan Lee.
created Captain America?
Come on,
That's not-
No, Stan Lee.
No, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. And my name was Stanley, but it was Joe. No, God. Joe and Jack.
I don't even know what to say.
Are you kidding me right now?
This is
Busting us.
I
don't even know this.
Yeah.
No,
For
I
one
don't
second.
know. It's pandemic. I've been doing research. I don't know.
You've been doing research on Marvel Comics?
Ask Leslie Bibb a comic question.
I know.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, I don't even have to count this. Like, Leslie's a genius.
I think we know what to say, Mark. A little email went across with the question.
A little too good.
A little too good.
Amazing. I think you should go on Mastermind.
My God. I mean, there's no doubt Leslie is the clear winner here. Everybody else, I've got to say, guys, you've completely disgraced yourself. Leslie, well done. You're the queen, as ever. And everybody else, read more comics, I guess. Guys, thanks very much for coming along to WonderCon at home. It's been absolutely brilliant. I had a great time. And it's free. How good is that? Next year, you have to pay again, but at least you get to see people in person. The downside, you can't sit and watch it in your underwear like this year. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who came along. And everybody's just been awesome. Wait till you see them in the show. If you think they're good here, wait till you see them costume and powers and all that. It's going to be brilliant.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Bye,
WonderCon.
everybody.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah,
See you
I
guys.
hope you guys enjoyed the
I
show.
never know if I'm in my underwear or
Absolutely.
not.
Thank you.
One day you're gonna be stronger than anyone else in the world. Every evil you can imagine is gonna rise up against mankind. And not for justice, for vengeance. You're gonna be the future.